what you see and hear. We are the people behind the curtain. We are the invisible ones. Prepare for a glimpse into a world many are unaware of and few have seen. Your journey begins now.
Welcome to the Invisible Ones podcast. You said insert name here.
Yes. Let's try that again.
Try, yeah, let's do it. Sorry.
So if you do hello, and then I'll do insert podcast listener's
Gotcha.
name here.
All right. Yo.
3,
Hello.
insert podcast listener's name here.
Welcome to the Invisible Ones podcast, a show about the people behind the curtain that make the live events industry work. Today, we'll be focusing on
Why live events need to come back. It's been 6 months almost, or give or take, depending on when your last show canceled. It's been 6 months since we've had live events here in the United States, around the world. And there's been a few here and there, but mostly there's been a lot of, virtual events. Those are kind of coming back. And most of the time it's actually been just people having Zoom meetings.
right.
And so before we get into today's episode, though, this being in our inaugural podcast for the Invisible Ones, let's talk about how this all came about.
Right. So, Tom and I been friends for quite a few years, maybe almost 2 decades. And Tom was very eloquent in this article that he wrote that got picked up by a couple of publications in the industry. And as we often do talk, when this first all started, we all think every one of us did this. We tried to reach out to all our friends and make sure everybody was doing okay. Our worlds were collapsing. And Tom wrote this amazing article, and it hit us right where it needed to hit us. It inspired us to, show everybody that we are the people who make everything happen behind the scenes. And so I approached Tom and I told him, Tom, this was so good, and so you had such a good response. Might as well let's see, what do we do about doing a podcast? And Tom agreed. This was about 3 months ago, Tom.
It was actually, so the article came out in May, end of May, and I think it was toward the end of June when you sent me that text. Hey, have you considered doing this as a podcast?
Right.
And I hadn't, but I was like, you know what? That actually sounds like a good idea. I mentioned it to my wife, and she was like, "Oh, that's an amazing idea. Yeah, you guys should do that."
Well, because we've been, the constant theme out there in all the, Facebook pages, industry magazines, everything else, and it's been, don't forget us. So I think the thing we need to do is say, hey, we're here, and you're not going to forget us, because even though you don't know us, and most of the time you don't see us, we're not that quiet. And so,
right.
we're not just going to stand by and just be forgotten. And the other thing is we are a resilient bunch of people. I know that gets said often in every crew, but that's something that we really are. Most of us came from other industries, and we made it to this industry. We've gotten really good at what we do because we are self-starters. And Tom's one of those people. And so I believe that I'm one of those people as well. And so, the podcast, we've been talking about, what we're going to be, discussing here and how things could help us, a little bit of history and a little bit of looking forward. So, Tom, go ahead and want to discuss what we're going to be talking about in the podcast, and we'll move it from there.
Well, and like you said, we all maybe got into this industry. I consider everybody in our industry kind of fell into it.
Right.
And I think the beauty of our industry is the fact that however you come into the industry, you find your place. There's a place for so many different types of people in our industry, and the industry will find a place for you because there's so many different jobs that need to be done behind the scenes. You've got your producers, you've got your production managers, production assistants, and then you've got all your technicians that, audio engineers, video engineers, camera ops, lighting designers, lighting technicians, master electricians, et cetera. And stagehands, and then, even down to the guys who really literally just push boxes,
Sure.
From the back of the truck into the ballroom and then, dump it off, and that's it. That's all they do.
Right.
And everybody has an opportunity to find their place in the industry. And I think that over the course of my coming up on 40 years in this industry, I have done, and I know you have done, many different jobs. And then you find that, you kind of fit into this niche here or there, and the industry will find a place for you. And that's the beauty of our industry. But to get back to what you were talking about with the article, the reason I wrote it was because I realized that one of our superpowers is that if we do our job right, nobody knows we exist.
Sees us, yeah.
But we're the people, we're the engine. We are the people behind the curtain. If you remember from The Wizard of Oz, they find out, hey, it's just this guy behind the curtain running all these dials, but that's what's making this massive thing happen. And this, all these special effects and everything. Well, in our current world, in the real world, that's a team of people that's backstage. And I remember a show we did back in New York City one year. It was last year. And we had a guest from National Geographic. It was a launch for a brand new phone. And he was going to come out and do a presentation about the quality of the camera. And one of our production assistants was walking him backstage, and he came back behind the curtain, and his jaw hit the floor. And he just stopped walking. And, and the production person was like, are you okay? And he's like, I just
couldn't believe it.
I just had no idea it took this many people to do this. And we only had like 30 people backstage on that show.
Right.
And, but the production person goes, well, there's another 10 out front that that you're not seeing right now as well. So, just a show like that. And then there was a whole other team of people that were working on the exhibit side of that. So that crew was almost 50 people. And that was just show crew. Never mind the people that came in, put it in, all that stuff.
Right.
And that kind of struck me when COVID hit and shows started canceling and, dropping like flies. It was like, there are millions of us.
Absolutely.
And this industry is massive. But our superpower, the fact that if we do our job right, no one knows we exist, is now our kryptonite.
Exactly. Yep.
And no one is talking about, they were talking about events that were canceling, but from the perspective of the people that were going to go.
Right.
Not the people that worked them. Just, you can't go to South by Southwest. Yeah, that's thousands of people that put that show on.
And the renditions of that crew, right? The renditions of a crew, you think about that, you were just talking about festivals. You're talking about live entertainment. You're talking about brick and mortar shows like Cirque du Soleil shows,
theater,
the Wang Theater, New York theater shows, and you start talking about convention, trade shows,
sporting events.
The list goes on and on and on.
Yep.
Even on cruise ships, there's a rendition of us.
Exactly.
Even on, you go out to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, you go out to, Disney, you go to, obviously
go
New
to
York,
Vegas, you go to casinos.
Vegas, casinos, all those things. There's a rendition of our crew somewhere. Somewhere there is, you said all the way from the case pusher, all the way to the LD, all the way to the designer, audio, video, lighting, production, and that also, riggers, theater. In theater, you have a lot of costumes. These other people that, I think when people say audiovisual, that's a very encapsulating thing. But when we're doing all these marches in Vegas to let people know that we're there, you've seen everybody who, dancers, musicians, we don't want to forget anybody, singers, anybody, spoken word, all this other things that include our industry. And so we wanted to kind of represent a little bit of a representation from our side.
Even film and television,
film and television, broadcast.
Many people, and I always do because, I have friends in the industry. I've worked in the film and TV industry. And so at the end of a movie, I watch all the credits. My family knows that. Like, we're not leaving, Dad's, we're watching the credits.
Right.
And everybody else leaves. And the thousands and thousands and thousands of names for each film that are there. And overnight, all those people out of work.
Exactly. And something you said, I wanted to make sure that we encapsulate that in my opinion, and it's one of those things, not one of these people that we mentioned, even when we said the case pushers or every single one of those people is like the foundation of the house. You can't build that house. You can't have the tower in that house without the foundation and case pushing, getting stuff out of the trucks, even the truckers themselves, even the actual transportation.
Truck drivers,
services, truck drivers, a good truck driver, when you have a good one and when you don't have a good one. So all these things that you start, all the way to the shop and warehouse people, all the way to the people who like solder connectors, cables. It's not just us. It's all the support staff, the office support staff, the accounting, the scheduling, the salespeople, all these people. I just want to make sure that we know we're not just covering AV. in the sense like you think it's a little guy who's putting up the projector. No, there's an entire mass of people that are employed by our industry.
And if you think about it, when you and I started talking about this, and I had actually started working on another potential article for it, I started doing some research, and I found this website that gave the information, and we can put a link to that. But that the money that is spent, just our industry, because you and I mostly work in corporate events, corporate live events, which are business, large scale business meetings. Facebook has a company meeting, Cisco, some of these other large companies that you and I have worked with, and some even of those big companies do smaller meetings all the time.
They all have subsidiaries that we do stuff for, et cetera.
And so there's many different aspects to that. That's our kind of bailiwick right now. But we've also worked in different aspects of the industry. I started in theater, worked in rock and roll, did film and TV, et cetera. But when we were talking about it, I was like, okay, let's look at the different industries just within the events industry in specifically. Corporate events is responsible for $325 billion of money spent annually. In the U.S. alone, and employs directly 2.5 million people. It indirectly employs hotel, travel, restaurant staff, cabs, Uber, Lyft, et cetera, 1.9 million people indirectly employed, getting some sort of benefit financially through work from the events industry. Cities themselves, and when you talk about like the bigger events, the amount of money that a city brings in when they host the Olympics, when they host a national convention,
like RSNA in Chicago, I know, for example, tens of thousands of people, that kind of thing.
CES in Vegas.
Absolutely.
I mean, I put the numbers in the article. I put the numbers from CES, and they talked about the number of attendees, the number of exhibitors, the number of businesses that were there that were Fortune 500. And what I mentioned in the article is all the numbers that they put in there, which are pretty large numbers for this show in Vegas that happens every year. They didn't even put in the numbers of all the crews that build the sets, that build the booths, that that are there for days and
what
weeks
we call IMD,
ahead.
And install and dismantle people. Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's our just corporate events market. Film, TV, theater, and concerts combined.
Touring, both in-house and touring. Concerts.
The annual spend of all four of those industries combined is under $100 billion a year. Corporate events, approximately $325 billion. The number of people employed in the corporate events market directly, 2.5 million in film, TV, theater, and concerts. 989,000, I believe is the number. It's under 1 million.
Sure.
And so the tiny little industry that we think of, we think of it as this tiny little industry, and it is. The way I think talk about it is it's a massive industry, but a very small world, because those of us that work on the higher end shows with the larger corporations, we're a pretty small, tight group.
Sure.
We all know each other. We all work together, have worked together for years. But there's millions and millions and millions of people that are working on the tiniest little show where you've got, it's a breakout room for 10 people or, 10 I've done shows for 250 CIOs of, all these different companies. I've done a show where we had 139 C-level executives, all from one corporation that had multiple corporations underneath it, up to, shows for tens of thousands of people that are either public or company-wide or, what have you. So it's a massive, massive industry. And overnight it was shut down before the lockdown happened. Number one. Number two, it will be the last industry to come back
up. Yep.
And so that's why, when we were talking about, that's why I wrote the article. And I think that's what prompted you to say, hey, what about doing a podcast? And then we spent the next couple months talking through what, how do we do that? What do we talk about? What do we make this about? And then, who's our audience? Who are we talking to? So if you're listening to the show, more than likely, you're probably Angel or my friend, and you know us through work or otherwise. But our real audience isn't the people in the industry. We know who we are. We know what we do. Right. Our audience are the corporate CEOs, the executives, the marketing people from companies, the event planners, and also the attendees.
Sure.
the people that go to shows. And I think, getting into kind of what today's episode about, which is why live events need, and I do put that all caps, need to come back.
Absolutely.
Is I think that there's a sense from people that are doing the Zoom meetings that are working from home. They believe everybody's working from home. Well, we already work from home.
Right.
Until we go to show site.
Exactly.
But if there's no show, there's no work, so we're just kind of sitting at home hoping a show will come back. But then if you look at, the people that go to these shows, they're not now. And I think that they feel like there's something missing in their lives. They're just not sure what it is.
They're getting phantom pains from a limb that they lost or something in that sense, right?
Right. And so, and many times, and I'm sure you've run into this on show site, is, people, you're maybe wandering around during a break or whatever, and you overhear some attendees, and occasionally you hear somebody say, like, why do we need to come to the show? Why do we need to be here? Couldn't they just send us an email, et cetera? And so, if you could, like your experience in the industry, and you've been doing this for how many years now?
I've been at it for over 25 years. I'd say closer to 28 years, which is, not, I always say, not as much as some, but way more than many.
Exactly.
So I feel like positioned right in the middle there, but you're absolutely right. I wanted to also not forget that house of worship as well is one,
right.
We I know that often gets, but there's thousands of people every weekend in our same industry that work.
They're doing the exact same work
we are. Exact same work. And so, to your question, I've been at it for about 28 years. And like you said, to me, the way that some people work in this industry, there are some people that specifically came out of high school and they wanted to go into theater and they did that.
Yep.
But to me, it's almost like I live in Vegas and it's almost like the people who live in Vegas. Nobody's really from Vegas. There's a few,
Yeah.
And to me, that's how the way the industry is. It's like nobody really started out to do this, but they ended up here. And a lot of these, a lot of our colleagues are highly, highly just sought after professionals, and it just became a side gig to them that became the gig.
Well, and to that point, I mean, I think we've talked about the face of our industry is the big concert,
right?
The Broadway, festivals, large films, major motion pictures.
For me, from
TV.
New Orleans Jazz Fest, right? And New Orleans is famous for they have a festival every weekend. It's what French Quarter Fest, all these other things, but you're right. It's all those things that you go to and you see and I don't know. To me, it makes me cringe the word, but I've gotten a little bit more used to it. The word roadie, because to me, we're so much more than that. But I mean, I know some people are They love the word. That's cool. To me, it's more we're technicians. We're professionals at what we do. We're technical people. We're very OCD, a lot of us, and when we love these things.
Well,
but anyway.
the term roadie, I think, stemmed originally from the touring rock and roll.
Absolutely, no, I get that.
Market. And,
I get that.
But how many days a year are you on the road?
Well, yeah, of course, 300 and some odd plus. And people always look at me and go, they cringe. But it's like, but to me, the thing, the roadie back in the days, the roadie had a connotation of some certain guy who's always doing drugs, et cetera.
It did. It was the guy on the back of the bus that never changes out of his sweatpants and is doing rock and roll.
And to me, like, we're technicians, but I get it. I've grown, and the reason I'm saying this is I've grown accustomed to the word roadie, and I just want to say that I've come around.
Yep.
I've come around, and I love the term now. So
no, and it's it is. It's and I would say that there's some some folks that would consider themselves roadies in our industry.
Absolutely.
That would not consider us to be roadies because we don't tour.
Right.
I mean, I toured.
Right. That was the other part of that.
Back in the day, I did several tours. All my tours were theater tours.
Right.
But I got to travel around Europe doing that, and I got to travel around most of the United States. And the cool part is, I'm getting paid to travel and go visit these places and meet all these amazing people. And I think that, to some people, that term roadie is people that are on tour versus people that go out and do shows. Yeah. But I'm on the road. I'm probably out of town on average between 200 to 250 days every year. And all over the world. I mean, I think, this year, not so much, but, but last year I actually did a little bit less. In 2018, I did 135,000 flight miles.
Wow. Yep.
In 2019, I think I did like just under 80,000. And that doesn't include any of the shows I did in town.
And somebody out there right now is going, amateur. No,
you're right.
And then somebody else is going. And that's why I say I'm really good at being in the middle because I'm like, I did about 122.
Yeah.
and somebody's going, oh my goodness, so many. And some other people are going, I doubled that. You know, it's like, so the cool thing is that, you know, we span so much, you know, from local to worldwide.
Well, you've even got, you know, people like you're saying, there's somebody out there going, you know, rookie,
rookies.
125,000 flight miles,
right.
Oh, rookie. And there's somebody out there going, really? Wow, I've done one out of town show this year, and I want to do more, you know? So that's kind of the scope of the industry. But so, and as we started to talk about there with, you know, the attendees out there, our real audience is the millions and millions of people that go to shows every year. For us, this is our livelihood. This is what we do. You know, I do on average between 30 to 40 shows a year. And each show, I'd say on average, I'm on show site anywhere from, you know, 4 to 12 to 14 days, you know, and everything in between, depending on the event, plus all pre-production time. So, but for your average attendee, they're going maybe 1-2 shows a year.
Shows a year?
Maybe.
Right.
And so,
they're looking forward to that show. You know, that's your show.
but getting back to that, what we were talking about before, that, you know, the people that are on show sites sometimes that are like, why do we need to be here?
Right.
You know, why couldn't we just do this on an email? Or, you know, why couldn't we do a virtual meeting even before Zoom became what it is and COVID and all the other stuff? People were already talking about, you know, doing video conference calls and stuff. Why can't they just put a video out on the website and we watch it there and get all the information that way? What's the point of a live event? What's the difference between getting an email full of information from your CEO and having that same CEO get up on stage in front of 3,000 people and deliver a message?
Right. To me, it's captivity.
Okay.
And that's not a bad thing, right? Captivity is not a bad thing. Also, it's immersion, right? It's also the sounds, the smells, the you know, just a human aspect of being in a room. Something you cannot reproduce sitting in front of this laptop in here. To me, this laptop becomes just the same thing as when you're binge watching Netflix. And to us these days, that has become hey, I can just walk away from it, right? Let me stop this. Let me go see what the dog's doing, or, you know, unless it's a live Zoom meeting, especially webinars. You know, webinars, you're like, oh, you know what, it's on demand. I can stop it, right? When you're sitting in a room and there's that CEO there, or, you know, let's say it's a company that's actually had like a Cirque style show, you know, show up to kind of encapsulate the meeting.
Or the big opening number to start the general
with
session.
all the smoke and all the pyro and everything else.
Yep.
You're not going to get that in front of this computer screen. And, you know, and I want to be real clear here. It's not that we're diminishing what we've been able to do with hybrid events or any of these things, but
no, in fact, on our next episode, we're going to talk specifically about virtual events.
Exactly.
But this particular episode is about the need for in person, and it's funny that we have to say that now.
Right.
We need more live events, and by that I mean live in person. You are physically in the room event. You know.
Well, I mean, to get back to this, like, you know, we just heard that the Cirque family has taken a massive hit, and we obviously, you know, they've taken a massive hit. If you've ever gone and seen the Beatles, or you've ever gone and seen Ka or anything like that, there's no way you could buy the DVD and play it in your 80, you know, or 50-inch screen at home with surround sound. It'll never come close to being there. Right. And I think not only that, live event possibility as an entertainment, but also the messaging. If you've ever been to an Apple, WWDC or a Samsung live event, there's nothing like seeing DJ Ko or, Phil Skiller or anybody present the phone in front of you right there. Yeah. I know a lot of people tune in, but if you've ever been in the room, there's nothing like it. And there's no replacement for it, in my opinion.
And actually, I read a book, actually not long after the lockdown happened, called The Power of Moments.
Right.
And one of the examples they used was a company that did a live meeting, and it was a healthcare company, and they were experiencing some issues, and they wanted to figure out how they could get this message across. And they had the conversation. Well, why don't we just send out an email, and we're going to change these things. And as they were talking through it, they realized, no, we need to get everybody in the same room. We need to give them the same message, and we need to let them know that we're all on board with this, and we need to get a buy-in from them while they're there.
Exactly.
So you mentioned that captivity thing, and I think the other aspect of that, along with like the Cirque thing. So yeah, you can go and watch and buy the DVD, buy the Blu-ray, and see it on an 80-inch screen at home with your family, and that's great, and it's beautiful, and it's awesome. But there's something to be said about not just being there live, but the shared experience. Because the show that you see when you go to it especially at a live show like a Cirque show or a Broadway play or even a concert or a corporate event, being there and that shared experience with the rest of that audience, no one who watches the video of that is going to have the same exact experience that the people that were in the room had.
Exactly.
And in this particular case, they had to split it up over, I would say like 4 to 5 days, because they were still running their company. You know, there were hospitals, they were people that, you know, needed to take care of other people in the hospital. So they couldn't just leave and all go to the same event.
Right.
So they broke it up and they brought in, you know, this group for these 2 days, and then this group, and basically from the, I can't remember exactly how many, it was like 5 or 6 different hospitals, and they kind of split it up like, okay, this many from your hospital, this many, and then next week, you know, flip flop, and you guys are working, and they can't.
Kind of the waves thing we used to do in Hawaii.
Right.
People would come in waves.
And we do that. We do that today still with large corporations. Mm-hmm. You know, you got the Western region and the you know, Northeast division is coming in and they're doing their meeting. And we've all done those where, you know, you're doing the same show, but, you know, it's this group this week, this group this week, this group that week, et cetera, and you're splitting it up. So they did that. And at the show, the CEO up on stage kind of said, hey, we're going to change some things up. And we're going to start doing this way. And how many of you are on board with that? It's stand up, you know? So you're physically in the room.
Right.
And it's hundreds of people, and they start standing up, and you're like, yeah, I'm on board with that. The CEO is right there in person telling us we're going to do this. Right. I'm on board with that. Let's do it. And then when they got back, the biggest thing that they saw that came out of that was the number of people that signed in to volunteer to help implement this new direction in the company. Mm-hmm. Something that before the show, they would have been like, hey, we need you to change up some stuff, and do it like, you're going to pay me extra for that? But because they were at the event, and because they saw the buy-in from the CEO and the top execs, and because they stood with their fellow employees in this room to say, yes, let's do this, hundreds of them volunteered to help start this and move it forward and keep it going. Right. That's the power of a live event.
Absolutely.
Versus, oh, I saw the CEO talking on screen.
Right. And the one thing that I was thinking about when you're talking about this is, you know, I've worked for a couple large companies in the industry, and, you know, a multi-office company, which used to, you know, maybe somebody from Orlando, maybe somebody from New Orleans, New York. And we would do some events sometimes where we would come together, and it was great to see, look, Tom Gillies, you see it on their badge. You're like, oh, let me shake your hand. That's who you are, man. I send you, you know, POs all the time. It's great to see you.
I recognize your name because I see your name on emails or on this or on this. And now we're meeting face to face.
Exactly.
How great that is. And that experience that you have.
And also the thing that I've seen in live events that you can't ever get in a hybrid event, because you just don't get that power of the audience, is, you know, especially multi-region companies, like sales companies, especially when you get to like, hey, East region, where you're at, and you get all these people stand up, this is us. Or you get, you know, central region, you know, APAC, you know, and who's the loudest or who's the most proud, and everybody brings a culture to it, you know, especially like Microsoft was a good when we used to do the global events, the global server events, and you'd see, you know, very proud, you know, the F1 racers and the you know, the football players, soccer players to us, you know, and they would get up and like, we do soccer, we do football, you know, and Americans would be like, no, we do football, we do real football. But even though it's like it's a you know, camaraderie thing, but it's a competitive thing, it still gets you together, and there's something you're not going to get in a hybrid event.
Oh, and it's that fun competition. It's not the beat down, like, you know, we're going to kick your butt. Right. It is, no, we're the best. No, we're the best. We're the best. You know what? We're all the best.
That's right. We're all the best.
Because we're all part of the same team.
Right.
And you're on this part of the team, and you're on that part of the team, but we're all in this together. And that camaraderie. And I think also that, you know, when you, especially the sales conferences, I think more than anything else, because they're designed to get people excited about the upcoming year. I mean, we did one in January for a pretty large corporation, and they've got their annual sales conference. We were in Vegas at, and where were we?
The MGM Grand.
MGM, right. It was like, MGM. Same hotel, different carpet.
Right.
Which was actually at one point a viable title for the podcast. Same hotel, different carpet.
Right.
But you know, and they've got their regions up there, and they did that. You remember the thing where they brought out the big blow up?
The balloons,
and we did hot potato.
Hot potato.
Yep. And we had that audience was what, 2,500 people?
It was 2,500. They also did tricycle races. Remember?
We did tricycle races. We did no. They were bicycles.
They were bicycles,
but they were kids bikes.
They were kids bikes.
They were
so
kids bicycle
well,
races, and but everybody, the 2,500 people that were in that crowd, when we were looking at it, when we were talking about the whole hot potato thing, I remember we even kind of laughed. We're like, really, we're going to play hot potato because we hadn't seen the balloons yet,
right?
But when they brought them in, and when that part of the event happened, that crowd
they went insane.
They devoured it, and they loved it. Yep. They actually didn't want it to end. We stopped the music, and we're like, whichever section ended up with the potato was the one that.
But it was kind of whatever still hopping around.
But it just kept going around the room, and we had to send the team out to go collect the balloons. Go get them. Go get them. We got to move on with the meeting, right?
That's when you had a succsuccessful segment, and that's
exactly.
great.
And it was used. Yeah. It was used to break up the some of the dry, because there's dry content. I mean, you have to get this information out there. Mm-hmm. But I think that's a company that does a great job of being creative in the way they present their content, and their executives get involved in it. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that are doing some of the crazy things on stage, and you see it in the results, the numbers that company does, and how it has grown, and how their sales staff has gone out there and just, taken that company to this massive level. I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar a year company. And you talk and you see the people as they're talking. And even, when we talk to them, they say they love working for that company, and they love being at that show, and they love getting everybody together and doing all that.
And just remembering from that show, because I was there with you, was running one of the boards, running E2. I still remember.
Don't say E2, just say Video Switcher.
Oh my goodness. I'm going to say E2 on this one because it's still valid. Now, 10 years from now, the E2 will be nothing. I'm sorry. I keep talking about it now. Anyway, meanwhile, back at the ranch, I was running one of the boards, but and you knew you'd gotten you'd gotten the message across after one of those segments when they brought up audience members and they had them come backstage and they finally saw the crew.
Right.
And, again, they said, oh, my goodness, I didn't know it took this many people.
Right.
And the second of all is, when you get that CEO, and there's those CEOs that really appreciate what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And I get it. It's part of their personal, they've probably been trained to do that or whatever, but some people are very genuine about it. And they'll come back, and that particular gentleman will come back and shake everybody's hand and spend, 5 or 10 seconds with you, which is a huge amount of time to say, I can't believe, thank you so much for the event that you did. And they get it.
Well, the guy from that show, the chief sales officer who runs that show,
always does it
every day. Mm-hmm. Walks into the ballroom, walks by front of house, it says, "Hey, how's it going today, guys?" Knows everybody by name. Mm-hmm. Goes backstage, does it again. Goes up, does the show. Comes out after the show, goes backstage and says thank you to every single crew member. Mm-hmm. Comes back up to front of house, says thank you very much, shakes your hand. Every day. Not just at the end of the show. Mm-hmm. Every single day. He recognizes, he appreciates everything and realizes that we are the engine that is driving his show. We're doing it at his direction, and we're giving them what they want, but he really gets it. Yeah. That without these people, we got nothing.
Right.
And I really, and I told him actually this year which was my second year doing the show, that particular show. I told him at the end, he came up to say thanks in front of house. And I said, and I turned to him and I said, I just wanted to let you know how much we really appreciate the fact that you take time to come up and say thank you. It means more than you could know to the crew. And he looked at me kind of like, what do you mean?
Right.
Like to him, that's who he is. Like you were saying, some of them, they're trying, go thank the crew, say something nice from the stage, et cetera. With him, it's totally genuine. It's who he is. And that's why he was just surprised when I told him not very many execs do that. He was like, really?
Right.
What?
How could they not do that?
How could, right. In his mind, like, how could you not do that? I mean, you guys do amazing work. You work in your butts. You're here long before I get here, and you're here long after I leave, and you're always working every time I see you. How could you not? Yeah, that's his reaction because that's who he is. Mm-hmm. And we have other execs that, just treat us frankly, like dog crap.
Right.
And
but we love working for them too.
And yes, technically, ladies and gentlemen, we are whores and we work for the highest bidder.
Right. I always say we're all whores. We just work a different corner every weekend.
That's right. And we have repeat customers,
Right,
you know,
right.
so who seem to like the way
times.
we do things, and they call us back, and because they like that one little special thing that we do.
Exactly.
But but getting back to actually the question I asked at first. So when in your experience from seeing people on shows, when the attendees are talking about like, you know, why do we need to be here? Have you had a chance to have a conversation with them about that, with just everyday attendees about, you know, that has that come up of why do we need to be here, and been able to offer an answer to them?
Absolutely. And I've seen it from both ways. One is like, why am I here? And the other one's like, how can I not been here? And that's the great part of it. Yeah. And the one sense is like, why are we here? You know what? And, you know, we're like, well, because you can't roll a 25-ton Caterpillar, you know, in your living room and get the point of that. That's why, yeah. Right? Or you can't see it. Well, when we used to do the back implants, surgery implants for, you know, particular medical company, you can't really see that. Or
no, yeah.
I'm not going to say smell because we've seen those too. We've smelled those things too.
Or the orthopedic, the orthopedic shows where they're cutting into, you know,
right,
cadavers on stage.
The bevy of things that we've done.
My favorite one was the raw veal that we used on a show that they were showing a new stapling thing, and they were doing it on raw veal for most of
right. Well, let me tell you something. You never forget, even after it's, you know, that this company had a couple of trucks, slide outs, that kind of thing. There were travel trailers, featherlight trailers, you know, the trailers that you see that usually production are in, but they had a surgical room that traveled from station to station or from convention to convention. Let me tell you, when you do a show in there, you never forget the smell of where a body has been, because these were actual cadavers.
Oh yeah.
And you never, and the cleaning supplies or cleaning smell of whatever formulation that they use never leaves your mind. And so, you know, in that sense, you know, I could see why people are like, I don't know why we're here doing this, but you kind of have to do it. You know, you kind of have to.
Well, and the
feel
importance, but you bring up about smell, and smell is such a powerful. Memory.
Real quick, I wanted to say, you know, nowadays we have hazers. We have water-based hazers. You know, whatever DF50s. I'm sure that's even old now, but I still remember. You will, and I was going to say, and I was going to really, really date myself, but you'll never, ever forget the smell of an F100, of a high-end F100, and that glycol just hitting your face, knowing that you're about to see a rave or some punk band or something like that. You know, those smells you'll never forget. You know, that's absolutely true.
That smell of an F100 combined with...
That's right. That just...
the sound of an F100 spitting fog, spitting smoke, really. Smoke, I mean, it's not even fog, it's smoke. Into the air, and you're right.
Which
that
basically
smell
was vaping back in the day, but
pretty much, yeah. If they just added a little nicotine in with the glycol.
Well, I remember they used to have pina colada and strawberry and all those in those fog juices. Back in the day. But
also, you know, going back in the day to those when you had the F100, you also were able to smoke in the ballroom sometime,
right,
or unless you know. And even when they canceled that, you know, John Featherstone was just like, I don't care, I'm smoking anyway. And we didn't need, in some shows, we didn't actually need a smoke machine because we had enough smokers on the crew and in the crowd. But so what you mentioned about the, you know, you can't get this, you know, we can't put this big piece of equipment in your living room. You can't do that. And then, so one of the things I experienced years ago was I was on a show and it was coffee break, and I overheard a couple of attendees talking. One of the gentlemen that was there was mentioning about how he was having an issue with some of the IT stuff at his work. And he was talking about it with somebody else, and another attendee overheard them, joined the conversation and said, oh, we ran into a similar type of issue. And, you know, we believe we found a fix for it. Let me go look through my stuff when I get back to the room tonight, and I'll send you an email. Yep. And I was like, you know, let's exchange info. So they exchanged info. They talked a little bit more about it, and then, you know, went on about their day. Well, the next morning, the guy gets up and he's getting ready and he checks his email, and there's, sure enough, there's an email from this guy he just met the day before with the answer to this problem that he and his team back at the office had been spending weeks, if not even, you know, more than a month trying to figure out. And here's the answer.
In that 5 minutes or whatever, that overnight or whatever it was, you solved that issue.
Here it is. Well, because this guy had the same issue, and they had already solved it. And so he's like, here's what we did, see if that works. And and then he told his team about it and they started working. He was like, sure enough, that's fixed the problem.
Right.
And I said, and you were telling him that story. And then you got into this question about why do we need to be here? If you weren't here, you wouldn't have met that guy.
Exactly.
You would not have gotten an answer and you would have gone back to the office. You guys still would have been working on that same problem. And now, months down the road, you run into another issue.
Right.
You got a resource.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking about,
you reach out to him and go, hey man, did you ever run into something like this? Like, let me call that guy and see if they've seen this before too. He helped us with that other thing. Right. Now you've got a resource in your industry that the only reason that you have that resource and the only reason that you're able to fix this problem is because you were at this event.
Exactly. And I wanted to add to that in saying that by putting those 1,000 people in that room, you just circumvented firewalls and hierarchies and everything else. And you were able to directly walk to that person and go, hey man, I do the same thing you do in Germany, or I do the same thing you do in Texas or wherever. We had this issue and I just heard that you solved it by something. And what if I had a little something to that? We did this. And right there, man, that's something you're not going to get behind a screen, that you will get. And you just created a friend too. That's another thing that you're not going to be able to do on a Zoom meeting per se. Is you shook that person's hand, man or woman. You did whatever you wanted to do, as far as exchanging information. And now you have another resource that you didn't have before.
Even if you're on a Zoom call.
Yeah.
And somebody mentions something in the chat window. And it's like, oh, hey, that's kind of one. Maybe I should, and you have the fleeting thought, maybe I should reach out to that person.
Yeah.
How many times are you actually going to do that?
Right.
Whereas if you're there in person,
here's my card.
You're at the coffee break. Here's my card. Hey, let's exchange info. You're at the bar after the show. You're sitting at you're going through the buffet line the next morning for breakfast.
Yep.
There's so many opportunities outside of the general session or the breakouts where the interactions that are happening amongst the attendees, that's where the business is getting done. That's where things are actually happening. You're not getting that with a Zoom meeting.
Right. And in many, and I wanted to add this also, in many occasions, a lot of people take that as a certain cue to have a family vacation or to interact back with a spouse, or be like, hey, let me add 2 days onto the tail of this event. And let's go do something in Vegas. Let's go to, Valley of the Fire, go to Zion, and, Orlando, let's take the kids to this, and New York, let's go to Broadway, and if you're doing something in the LA Convention Center, hey, let's go to Hollywood. Yeah. It's you're not going to get these things. And I guess we're pounding this to the ground, but it's like, that's why we're here. That's why it's always been so important to go out to these shows and do these things. And even regional conventions or regional get-togethers. It's still a place to get together. Hey man, go to lunch or do whatever and interact. So, and
like that's you said, it's the, and you and I have been through this, and, we deal with this on our, we're doing pre-production for a show.
Sure.
We're sending out emails. We're having conference calls. Sometimes they were, online, they're video conference calls. But I've also noticed and texting, and people will text back and forth, and then you'll get these super long email chains. And I found, when that started happening several years ago, that by the 10th email, I was like, you know what? Let's just pick up the phone and call.
Right.
Because you can handle in a 30-second phone call what you haven't handled in the last 15 emails because there's confusion here, there. Let's just get on the call.
Also, a phone call gives you intent and pitch and tone and
And I think that carries over into being at a live event and physically being in the room as an attendee, experiencing the show, interacting with the other attendees, having those conversations before, during, and after, and those that part of the experience is something that just cannot be replicated in the virtual world. And I think also speaking to it, not just from the attendee standpoint, but from the planning standpoint, from a company standpoint, from a Microsoft or Apple or some of these other large corporations. And I don't even know if this is possible, but it probably is. There's probably some number cruncher out there that can figure out some algorithm. How much money are you losing? Not because people aren't going out of their houses and buying your products. People are buying products online.
Sure.
How much money are you losing because people aren't going to live events where a lot of business gets done? Trade show floor.
Well, look at NAMM.
Yeah,
how do you get artists to put their guitar and put your guitar in their hands, put their audio interface, their microphones, whatever. You're not going you can emulate all you want in a piece of software. You're not going to know what a Neumann sounds like. You're not going to know what these headphones feel like. You're not going to know the awesome tone that this bass or this guitar, this, whatever has. That's a live event, And I wanted to just kind of do a little funny here real quick.
Sure.
That
We'll find out what that little funny angel wants to tell and more about why live events need to come back next week in part 2. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, hit that notification bell, but most importantly, share. Share it with your network. Help us shine the spotlight on those invisible ones who make up the engines that drive much of our economies around the world. Take care, gang. Invisible ones disappearing back behind the curtain till next time in 3, 2,